think he stopped after like the fifth book. So I think he caught up to where Alex was. And
Everybody's on book 5. I don't know why everybody is stalling on book 5. Well, because I didn't take the book because I have it on my phone. I got the ebook because Nate needed it. I'm pretty sure Nate has book 5 at Penn State. Because
ours I haven't.
yeah, because I asked
No,
you to
I think
find
I
it.
found it here.
Oh, did you?
No, I thought you wanted book 6.
No, I wanted book 5 because there's. I should show you the video if you didn't, but there's. I'm not gonna try to dig it down. There's a really weird cover of Fires of Heaven that's used for the audiobooks, and a friend of mine was trying to track down where it came from, and they told him that in a very specific edition of book 5, it was published as like the back flap cover, like the in the flap. That's where it was, and we can't find it physically anywhere. So that's what I was wondering about, but it's absolutely a mystery. Nobody knows where it came from, why it exists.
Welcome to Another Turning. I'm Jessi, and my brother Ben and I are on a quest to inform everyone about the upcoming Amazon adaptation of Wheel of Time, our hopes, our fears, and our grand opinions. Follow along as we revisit some of the history of the series' path to the screen and predict what is yet to come.
Welcome to another episode of Another Turning.
We're gonna be talking about the One Power today, what it is, and what we're hoping the show will do with it.
Yeah, decided today because with the show starting, I know even people who read the books is they can get confused about some of the terminology. As you hear One Power, you hear True Source, you have Side In, Side R, and some confusion happened there. And I thought it'd be fun to make sure that stuff gets explained, as well as maybe kind of explain exactly what is the true source, and at least what my opinion on like a pseudo visualization of like how to remember it and how it works within the world, both as a magic and as a natural source or force. I mean, because it's really interesting if you really like think about it, like how the whole concept of it, and of course with the show coming out, how we think it could be utilized and shown. And we've probably mentioned it a little bit, but really get into it again and what we think.
So just to be clear, is this how many? What's the spoiler level on this one? Because are we going to talk about some late series stuff, or are we going to try to keep it to like what we know from the first 2 books?
For actual like knowledge of, for story related stuff, I want to keep the spoilers very limited. But the concept of like the inner details of how the One Power works and what it is a world building spoiler. But it's one of those things that, is that a spoiler? Is it not? Explaining how the true source works and what the powers are, I don't know how well it actually ever gets explained, except very slowly. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the true power because I don't even know if people watching this, that if they haven't read all the books, know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so kind of relatively spoiler free, I guess. Make the judgment call for yourself if you think that like world building details are something you don't want to have revealed out of turn. But as far as plot, character, we'll keep it to the first 2 books.
Yeah, if you haven't read any of the books and you're just kind of like found us somehow because you're looking forward to this new show you heard about called The Wheel of Time, again, this is all world building related stuff. It'd be like telling you that there's a city somewhere and it was built by so and so, kind of world building knowledge. If you've read the books, you have a slight knowledge of it, and if you rather try to organically figure out how it works on your own, maybe watch this later. That's up to you. Use your best judgment, I guess. Yeah.
All right. So you're taking the lead on this because this is your idea. So what are we talking about, Ben?
All right. So in the world of Wheel of Time, we have the Aes Sedai as the main magic users. And I know people don't like the word magic when we're talking Wheel of Time. They're called channelers.
But it's a magic system. You can call it magic.
I know. But what they do is channeling. And the Aes Sedai, which are all female, channel Side R. There's an opposite to that called Side In, which is channeled by men. you learn pretty early on in the series that if men can use this power, it'll cause them to go crazy. So both side in and side R come from what is called the true source. The true source is the energy that moves the wheel of time. The wheel of time being the wheel of time. I mean, I don't know how better to explain that. It's the wheel that, well, it's in Wheel of Time. It's described as it weaves the pattern of time with people's lives and all that stuff. So side in and side R, the easiest way is it's like a push and a pull. How I always think about it is I think of it as a water wheel. And the true source is a river, which is this universal power, and it pushes through, and one of them is side in, and then the water that flows the other way over top of it is the other one. Or maybe there's two rivers, however you want to picture it. There's two.
This is going well, Ben.
It can be very confusing, and I've pictured in my head is I always thinking the channelers there, but you have the concept of yin and yang. You have two things moving against each other, and the wheel would be in the center of them, however you want to picture it. But the wheel being turned is one force is moving one direction, one's moving the other, but they both come from the same spot, the same pool of water, whatever it is. So when we're talking Aes Sedai, they use side R. And what's interesting about it is you learn a little bit about how they use the source is they have to surrender to it. So they just kind of, and this is what I meant by the water wheel kind of concept, is they dip into this flowing power of Saidar. And rather than forcing it to do anything, they just allow it to move naturally, and they harness the energy from it in a way, and that's how I picture it. And they can split it off into fire, water, earth, air, or spirit to do things. You can chime in if you have any comments about all of this.
I mean, you're doing great so far. Other than I don't agree with how you pronounce Sidene, but...
Oh, how is Sidene supposed to be pronounced?
Well, you're saying Sidon. I say Sidene.
I say it both ways. Sadin, Sadine, Sidon,
No.
Sidene.
Satyr.
Saidin.
Anyway. No, I mean, yeah, I think you're kind of getting it. So like the water wheel imagery, I think, is specifically brought up in the idea that like the one power cannot be used up. It is a force that flows, and that flow of energy is used by a channeler, kind of like a water wheel uses the flow of water, but it doesn't use the water itself.
Yeah, that's what I meant. See, I didn't write anything down because, I'm like, I know this stuff. And of course, I already got myself confused this early.
It's fine. That's how I teach.
So this force. So yeah, the water wheel is how I think of at least female channelers with Saidar. It's like a water wheel. Is you have this energy pushes past you, and they talk about how much of the power you can control. And I don't know enough about water wheels to know if there's any way if like, hey, you have a bigger water wheel. I don't know if that if that translates.
No. I think the metaphor can stop there.
I don't know. I just thought I'd say it. I don't know if the metaphor continues in that sense, if there's any way. But so yeah, you don't use up the power. It's just something that it happens. And when it comes to controlling the different powers, you have, like I said, fire, water, earth, air, and spirit. Easily taken from any kind of like, the classic 4 elements. And then a lot of times in magic and other stuff, you'll hear light and dark. Spirit is another common one.
It's the 4 Avatar. Fire, earth, water, air, and spirit.
So obviously when they're actually channeling, is this energy that they are harnessing comes out, and you can manipulate it in a way. And this is what's going to be what we see. We obviously don't. We might see some of how they harness it, what they're doing in their mind, the whole meditative state of how they harness it at first. I don't know what they'll show. I think it would be cool if we get to them learning it at the White Tower. The imagery we hear all the time is a flower opening up.
Yeah, for women channeling Sidar, the two images is a flower. You picture a bud opening to light, a flower blooming, or it's you picture a river being encased by a bank and being directed by
Yeah,
the bank. I
and
don't
that's
know if
where
we'll get
it's
those. I don't know if there's a way. So, like, to talk about the show for this far, and we can move on to like other things. I don't know if there's a way for them to do that in a live action show without it being super cheesy, you know?
look, if it was animated, I'm totally
Oh yeah, if
picturing
it was
like a Sailor
anime,
Moon scene,
I don't know if I'd go that far, but
like a
like yeah,
magical girl transformation kind of scene almost, where it's
yeah, but like
like,
they could do that. You can show the mental visualization in an animated form. I don't know how you do that in live action without it looking incredibly stupid. Like,
maybe.
so it's just you kind of have to
But
deal
so
with the. I mean, maybe if it was like super stylized, but I think I don't know. I don't know how to do that part. Like we get the like lecture of this is how you do it. I don't know how to show that. And obviously you wouldn't want to show it every time. Like that would
oh, I
get
know.
really annoying. But
So then how is it going to look when they actually use the power? So this is what's really interesting about it. Is we learn is that you don't need to do anything special. Obviously, a lot of people, if they're going to throw a fireball, they push their hand out or make a throwing motion. And we learn also that that's not needed. And depending on your skill level and how you were taught, depends on whether or not you use your hand motions. Obviously, for a TV show, early on, they definitely have to have some kind of hand stuff. It would be weird. It would be weird if, an Aes Sedai or somebody else who channels is just standing there and all of a sudden fireball appears out of nowhere and gets flung at somebody.
yeah, I think it's good to show I think it's good to show something visual so we can see who's doing what. You know, because otherwise you have like weird stuff where people are like, I don't know where that came from. Um, yeah, I can't say what I want to say. Yeah, no, I'll keep that thought to myself. But yeah, it was a little
That's why,
spoiler. Yeah, but I think you need to have some sort of visual thing. And you could even have like, I mean, we learn about like Wilders, right? That they kind of do stuff differently. So like we can even see like Nynaeve when she does something, does it differently because she learned it by instinct and not because of the way the Aes Sedai taught it. So like
and yeah,
that would be an interesting way to show that like maybe what they're doing isn't necessary, but to at least have that
that's
like
what,
element.
yeah, that's what will be really fun is to see. And I don't know how many channelers we'll see in the first season, but it will, even throughout the first, after the first season, it'd be really interesting to see how different people do the same thing differently. Like
Mm-hmm.
I use a fireball because it's such a flashy thing, and different people, it's something we can relate to. Is it'd be interesting that our first channelers we see, they do an open hand above their head, a fireball appears, and they throw it like a baseball. Where another person just points their finger and it appears on the at the end of their finger and it launches
Wicked
out.
Witch of the West style.
But it would be interesting to see how they could do different stuff like that. But beyond the basics of that, we've talked about it a little bit, is are they going to show the actual weaving? Because again, back to what channeling is, it's always described as weaving something. Because the flows, and all I can think about is all your different elements, they're like strands that for you, when you're learning, you're literally weaving them together. It's the only way that makes sense from what we're given. And I think it'd be visually stunning, but I'm wondering how well it would be able to be used in the TV show.
So I think the one visually what people draw a lot from is the Doctor Strange movie. A lot of people reference that and how the magic is seen in that because it's a lot of like lines coming together, but that's more of like a drawing sketching thing. I think it could look good. I think the issue is, I think where it can get a little complicated is I would want consistency. And I know this is like such a nitpicky thing, but if two different people are doing the same thing in different scenes, I want it to look the same.
Yeah.
If they're weaving the same weave. And that's the kind of thing where, like, for a show that can get really annoying. You could, just have pretty lines drawing, and I'd want it to look like weaving, like some sort of threads being woven together into like a Celtic knot pattern design thing
Yeah.
before the effect
I
takes
could
place.
I could see it working for some stuff, but like I'll keep coming back to the fireball because it's the most classic of I'm gonna attack somebody thing. Um, if you're having a huge battle between two people and they're throwing fireball after fireball, it would get repetitive and it
Oh,
would
right.
become distracting.
Right.
But
And I
for
wouldn't want it for
single things
everything.
like healing, for instance, I could see, okay, there's a wound on a person. You place your hands on the wound, over the wound, and you could see coming in from all these directions around the different colored lines because it takes more than one of the elements to heal, and you can see them weave almost like a tapestry over top of the wound or the whole body, and then it glows and they get
Yeah.
healed.
I wouldn't want
Again,
it
the
for every scene.
fireball,
Yeah. I
something
think,
like a fireball, you would see they would like, okay, we're holding your hand out. We see all these lines come in and form like a little tapestry above the hand, and then from that, a fire sprouts out.
yeah.
Um,
I think it's something that should be used in specific instances. I don't think every time we see channeling, we need to see the weaves. I think two things. I think in the first season, we probably won't see the weaves at all unless we get into like Egwene and Nynaeve learning how to channel, because nobody knows what's happening. So,
yeah,
like, in the first season, I don't think we need to see them until we get to that part. Maybe a little bit with the climax of Eye of the Worlds, they could do some. But I think for specific moments, we should see it. When they're learning weaves, we should see that kind of thing. Certain stuff, not to the Aes Sedai test. I'm not gonna like talk, but like that's the night 100 weaves they
oh
have to
yeah,
do that are like super complicated and do stupid things. Like when they practice that, I want to see the weaves happening.
well,
The first
I
time
agree. That's
somebody does something, I want to see that weave. But it doesn't have to be every time by any means. I think that gets absolutely insane if that's like we're having a massive battle between channelers. Not to say that ever happens, but um, and there's channelers on both sides. Like that's just gonna look messy. It's gonna look bad.
yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's the concept of learning is the best place to integrate it. Also, because learning can be seen as a boring thing to watch in a show. So if you have this really amazing visual effect to go along with it, it ups the scene in general. Also, how you mentioned when somebody uses something for the first time or when they realize what they're doing for the first time, because we talk about like Nynaeve, she doesn't know what she's doing, but when she finally accepts that she's channeling,
Oh, that would be cool, especially if they have like. I don't think there's a scene in the books like this. I
not
don't
without
think.
spoil, I'm thinking
No,
of a
no, like I know.
specific scene.
No, I know what you're thinking of, but I don't think there's like a specific scene where like Nynaeve is doing something and then she like accepts that she's channeling. But I think that would be a cool moment in the show to have that, like she's been denying that she can channel and then she has to like heal somebody, and like she has her herbs or whatever and she's trying to heal them, and like halfway through we see the weaves appear and it's that like moment she realizes what she's
Yeah, like I
doing.
mean,
That would
but
be
not
a
just
really
her,
cool scene.
but not just her accepting it. Like you said, she just kind of does things without being taught it. Is if somebody discovers themselves doing something that they weren't taught, it would be cool to see the weaves there.
Mhm.
Obviously, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but there's
There's certain
natural
scenes that
progression.
if you don't show the weaves, it would be a really dumb scene.
Well, you want to know what part of my reason for wanting to see them is?
Mhm.
Okay, we're told in the books that obviously fire requires just fire. We're not air like we get told about grabbing people with air. That's just flows of air. But healing, we know, takes multiple kinds. Other
Yeah,
channeling,
air, water, spirit.
making the lightning, for instance, is that a
Mhm.
mixture of air and fire? It'd be really cool to see what the show decides to come up with for certain weaves. And obviously, the later ones, they say there's thousands of strands. It's gonna
Right.
be
It would get
complex.
over the top, I think. But I don't know. I think it's something that could be so visually stunning, especially the stuff that like doesn't have an obvious visual effect. Like so like a fireball is going to look cool. It's a fireball, right?
Yeah.
You know, but some of the other things, and I'm trying to think if there's even an example. I can't even think of an example in the first two books, unfortunately.
Creating a light.
But even that, like you can see the light. I'm thinking of stuff from like later on where there's absolutely nothing visual beyond what the channeler is talking about.
There's not a lot that happens without getting into super
Yeah,
spoilers.
so like unfortunately I can't talk about that with spoilers, but like if they don't establish early on what's happened, like they can't just suddenly start showing weaves in season 4. Like they have to kind of slowly build that.
Exactly.
So I think it could look really cool, but it's something that needs to be very carefully done. I think it needs to be chosen when they're doing it. They can't just like always show the weaves. It'd be cluttered and messy. But
Yeah.
I think it could be cool.
And I know another thing we discussed is in our episode breakdowns is having some form of cue, uh, visually or with sound, for when people are channeling. We talked about
Hmm.
this in episodes, and I think it's a good thing to do because as long as there is one channeler in a scene, we're going to be from a third person point of view. So it depends on how much knowledge they want to give to us. Talking about things, obviously, if somebody creates a fire, that you watch them create a fire, but I can't think of any specific scenes other than what we talked about in episodes. But um, it'd be interesting for when we see somebody do something that it isn't obvious they channel, like they're trying to hide it. If there was some kind of a cue to say, "Hey, there's another channeler channeling somewhere," like
Mm,
not the obvious ones.
it
We
depends on
just
what
met
they
a
want the purpose to be. So, like, I think, like, okay, if we talk about like book one, Rand channeling to make Bella go faster, I wouldn't want them to do any sort of visual effect there. I want that to be
yeah,
like subtle. But if it's something like, yeah, I can't think of any examples, like, because it's either you want people to know there's channeling happening or you don't, you know? I can't think of
yeah.
anything where, like, you would want to show that channeling's happening without, I can't think of an example of that right
Well, I
now.
mean, I know specifically we talked with Rand. If there was some slight change to the music when he's doing it, that was subtle, and I think obviously as we get later until the end of the first book, like it morphs into a what the ending song's gonna be for the end of book one,
Oh, that would be
like
cute.
would be kind of cool.
Um,
But what I'm thinking is
mhm,
like Egwene when she's
okay.
trying to channel
Oh, so like you
is
see like the threads kind of
there's
half forming and then fading before she like
that as
learns.
well as maybe a little bit of a sound cue too, where it's like, hey, she's starting to succeed when she's with Moraine. And if we see when she's trying to start the fire, when she does it on her own, we get that slight sound cue and then the fire starts. But then when she's trying to do it with Perrin later, maybe the sound starts and stops, and you don't quite see anything happening.
Interesting. I'm thinking of like doing like, I can't, oh gosh, this is going to be me sounding like an idiot trying to talk about music, but like if we say like it was like a violin string, like, and you could have it like not cut off but like very staccato, like there's a long note that just kind of abruptly ends or
Yeah,
something like
I
that, so you can
know
see that
what.
something's not quite
Trying to
right.
think of it's almost would be like somebody playing the wrong note all of
Ooh.
a sudden, like she's trying to channel on her own for the first time when she's trying to light the fire, and then you hear this music, and if you've paid attention maybe you understand it, or maybe it's happened a few times by now, and it starts to play, and then you get like a plucked chord that's wrong or something, and she give it when she like goes, oh, I can't get it to work, and then she starts. It might be fun to add sound effects like that in for the early, like first season or so when they're learning
Well, and
before the
even
tower.
later, even later when like Nynaeve with her block, when she's like trying to channel, like that's the kind of stuff you could keep up and thematically have some really interesting stuff to do with that leitmotif where it's starts be like, this is what it is when it's working the way it's supposed to be, but if this is a problem, or ooh, if somebody gets cut off from the source very abruptly, the music just like cuts out.
I imagine if we ever have like battles between channelers, like that's why I said it would be cool, the concept of Rand, if we start like with Bella, is there's like, you hear a slight change, like there's this melody underneath everything that you might not pick up on, and then the next time you get maybe a little bit more. Then the lightning, you kind of, by that point, it'll be not obvious that there's a music change. Like, obviously, the music's going to change because of the scene.
Because there's lightning.
There will be maybe a familiarity to that earlier stuff.
Setting the pattern. Wow, something really strange just happened to Rand. And you kind of, it's the subconscious thing. So, like, music design is not something I by any means know a lot about. I think it's just cool. It's one of those things like I like hearing about it after the fact, like, oh, that's what that was. That's neat. And so that's kind of what it is. I think it's the kind of, you want it to be subconsciously in your brain that you linking these events that don't seem super related, but you're not really sure why you're linking them.
And then like when we get to the Eye of the World, it'll be like Rand's theme song almost, where it's like the music finally flares to the full thing that we were getting hinted at when he gets into the fight. And we can have, now this is going crazy, every channeler has their own rhythm, their own song. So when two channelers fight, it's actually a banjo versus a violin battle.
No, but I do think you could have, so like if you have like a Saidin and a Saidar leitmotif, and you have some sort of blending of the two that works whenever you're channeling both together, right? And then having slight, I mean, imagine. And then have like slight variations for specific groups. And then so like the Chosen might have the same thing, but in like a minor key.
Excuse me, the Forsaken?
It just kind of slipped out there.
Wow. Only because like the concept you said about somebody being cut off from the source, and for
because it would be cool because if you have like the like leitmotif for, and then like maybe like specific groups would have, so like the Forsaken might have some, the Aes Sedai would have their own, that kind of thing. And then like maybe specific channelers, not every channeler, obviously.
I know,
but
I was
like
joking.
Certain people. So like, well, the thing is like for a show like this, like Egwene, Nynaeve, Matt, Perrin, Rand, Moraine are probably going to have their own themes anyway. So like for those that are channelers, having that channeling leitmotif mixed in with their theme, but not necessarily totally different.
I was joking, but I was thinking it would definitely be interesting. Again, I'm not a huge into sound design, but like for that final battle, like final battle scene, whatever, is when
Alzaman and Rand have like slightly different competing ones when they're like tugging on the thread for Eye of the World. I'm thinking
like Devil Went Down to Georgia, but
I love it.
It's
I also
almost exactly like what that is, but in music, but that kind of concept. So, and that's
this
the
is
first
why
time
the show should just be a musical.
I know. Lord of the Rings should have been a musical, but
look, if Lord of the Rings was faithfully adapted, it would have been a musical because
exactly. I know. I finally read those books, but no. But what I mean is, it would be interesting to get people. That's the first time they ever see it. Is how you said it. Is it's like when that chord gets cut, there's an obvious musical cue to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
But so
and I even think you could have, if you really want to get crazy, and I don't know enough about music to be like, I'm throwing out really insane ideas, or this is obviously what'll happen. But even having like specific weaves have slight variations. So like weaves we see a lot, not like every weave, obviously, but like things like healing has a slightly different sound. And I'm trying to think of other examples I could talk about spoiler free. Compulsion would have a slightly different sound.
I get what you're saying. I was almost gonna say if every element like had a different instrument.
Oh, that could be cool. So like so you have like, I don't know how easy that would be to do.
Earth would have a distinct drum line. Air would be a nice light flute. Fire would be a guitar. Water would be
Violin.
uh,
One of
but
those
you know what
rain
I mean?
sticks. Anyway.
No,
No, but I
like,
get what you're saying. It is if you have like that and then like what they're weaving is like those are the ones being played, but I don't know how easy that is. I want to go listen to like Peter and the Wolf, which like does cool stuff like that. Cause like, I don't know if you're familiar. Peter and the Wolf was one of those shows I had to watch like so many times in elementary school in music classes because the teacher would just put it on when they didn't care what to do with us. And it's all told through music, and like each of the characters in the play has like their own sound that's played with a different instrument. So you're like, oh, that high trilling flute means the rabbit's coming into the scene or whatever. So that's the kind of thing. It sounds like kind of what you want, and I could see that. Hey, Misha.
no, I'm going into the crazier ideas because I don't know what else actually channeling in this show. I'm trying to think of anything actually I want, like seriously. So I'm going into a little bit of the crazier stuff that might be interesting or
No, I think it
really
would be
awesome.
so cool. Like, I don't know enough about music to be like, this is definitely a thing that could be happening, but I think it's totally possible that, like, if that's the route they wanted to go with it.
It was just the concept that wind is so evocative of music so many times in things. Like a wind blows and you get the tinkling of chimes added in. So it'd be interesting to, when we're seeing those weaves, have sound to go along
Well,
with
you could
it rather
almost, excuse me, if you wanted to give them like a section, so not like a distinct instrument per weave or per thread, but you could have like, I shouldn't have had beer, I'm like burping now. Is you could have like the woodwind section would be for air, the brass section would be for fire, the strings for water, and then the percussion for earth, and then spirit would be
vocals.
You just get the intro to the Foreigner, Refugee by the Foreigner.
No, it'd be like, oh, like a choir of angels would be spirit. No,
I don't know about that.
I'm talking about for specific scenes, and it would be interesting because, okay, like we're talking about healing. For important healing scenes, obviously, like, you know, oh, hey, you got a scratch, boom, you're healed. But for like somebody's about to die, like
I was going to say
might be too
Matt.
early to do it.
I was going to say
but
Matt.
For Matt's, where if you see all the weaves coming in visually, and it starts with a flow of air, and you start to get a little bit of the woodwinds, and then also you start to see some flows of earth come in, and you start to get a drum line, and then you get some flows of water.
That would be cool. No, you're definitely right.
It builds to a crescendo when the healing takes effect.
I really like this idea. I need music people to tell us this is possible because I really like the idea.
I need somebody who knows how to make visual art, like animations, and somebody who knows music to get together right now and make this happen.
Well, apparently the Wheel of Time community has a lot of very talented musicians. I learned that this week, so.
Did you watch the parody stuff?
I didn't watch the stream live, unfortunately, because it was like too late and I was like going to bed, but I watched a lot of it afterwards and it was so good.
I was just thinking about, somebody mentioned something, and I haven't watched any of these, but I was thinking about it for some reason, is making a song about channeling Saidin set to the colors of the wind.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You know, if they do a second one, we can work on this.
So I don't know about anything else for the show. All I could think is if we kind of wanted to explain a little bit of how I think of Saidin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We can talk a little bit about Saidin, like what we would want to be different, if anything. The only other thing with Saidar is, do you want two things, I guess. One, the Aes Sedai face, and which we can only talk about a little bit, and 2, the glow. That
So the Aes Sedai face, and this is the one thing I would be fine with them taking out, because the more I think about it, to get a consistent Aes Sedai face, an ageless face to work, and this is the thing besides everything else people claim about adapting a book to TV, there's things like the Aes Sedai face that when you're told about it in a book and you picture it in your head, you're like, oh, of course, that makes complete sense. But when you're trying to visually adapt somebody with an ageless face, especially when we're talking about Hollywood actors who all have ageless faces to begin with, um, it doesn't work as exactly, because it's not like something you can define in a visual means. Like, it's written on the page, but if you actually saw somebody with an ageless face, if you were to describe word for word what was different about it other than saying ageless face, how would you do it? So I think they need some other visual cue to define Aes Sedai, because it is important that they're set apart somehow.
yeah.
But it's got to be subtle enough that if you're not familiar with them, you don't know. And I
Mhm.
don't have answers for how they're going to do this.
I
I'm
just have
sorry.
Yeah, no, so here's the thing. I don't think the ageless face is like impossible. I think you could do like Snapchat filters have pretty good ageless faces. I just think it won't look good. Um but yeah, I agree. I that's basically where I stand on it, is that like there needs to be some sort of visual cue for reasons. But yeah, I don't know that the ageless face is the right one. A lot of people suggest eye color, but the 2 reasons I wouldn't do that is because the Wolf brothers already have that. And also, then I feel like it just kind of looks like every other fantasy where, ooh, your magic users have a different eye color. And I don't want that.
I think they could still do it, but it'd be very specific. It won't be exactly how it's described in the books, where it feels like it confuses you almost to look at. Because what I compare the ageless face to is similar to when it's like you're described of, hey, that character looks young, but I looked into their eyes and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're old.
Right. That's
How do you
exactly what
put
it
that?
is. It's that
So
they look young, they have smooth skin, they don't have gray hair, yet their eyes are wise beyond or whatever.
yeah, the best way I can say it is to do like things like crow's feet, or something that you can have
I get what
without,
you're saying, but I don't like it.
but it can show age, but can be subtle enough that if it's like done right, but have like smooth cheeks, have um like the wrinkles, but the smooth skin for other things, like certain things like the crow's feet, or like lines on the edge of the mouth, the laugh lines, whatever they call those, have a couple of wrinkles like that maybe for the older ones. But most of the characters we meet, we're talking about like a 40-year-old person with an ageless face. So I don't know. um
Yeah, I don't know how to do it either. Especially, but there needs to be something visual, and it can't be something as obvious as like, oh, all of the Aes Sedai have green hair. Isn't that interesting? Um,
it's got
but
to be
like,
something that it changes them, but it doesn't make them all look the same. It can't be the
mm,
same for all of them. It could be like, I know this is crazy, but there's a slight glow, like a shimmer almost to their skin, which sounds a little bit ridiculous.
okay,
Um,
hear me
at
out.
least for the,
They sparkle in the sunlight.
I think that's been done before.
What?
But no, like, I mean, what I'm thinking is, obviously you still make them look ageless. Like if you have a 60-year-old actress for
Right. She's
something,
still gonna.
you you try your best to make her look 20. You try to make all of your
Or
Aes
you say
Sedai
she's
look
300 years
20.
old.
I don't know. Well, yeah, but um, I'm just talking about most of the Aes Sedai we deal with are under the 100 mark.
Yeah, no,
Spoiler, but
not really.
so I think
Um,
you get you make most of them look 20, and then you add just like, we're talking about filters. I'm talking about like there's a slight filter whenever they're on screen, so there's just, it
I
looks
wonder. how subtly you could do something like that, like just slightly distort the color around them or slightly distort the saturation around
Specifically
them.
just their skin tone in some way. But then again, we're talking about dark skin, light skin. How can it come across for all of them?
I think you
And I don't
could
know.
if you did if it was like a consistent distortion. My worry would be it's not subtle enough. But I don't know,
I
like you
don't
just
I don't know. All I'm thinking is like for their skin tone, you go through and it might be annoying. I don't know how easy it'd be to do where it's like for their skin, we're gonna tick the blue coloring up by 5 for
right.
everybody. And it might make a
Right.
slight enough difference. I
Just
don't
enough that they
know.
look different, that they stand out just that little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you need something. I know even less about visual design than I do about music design. So
I don't know which I know more about. But as for the glow, that's a hard one.
kind of the
Because we
opinion they
talk about
just ditch it. I think if they just talk about how they can feel when another one's doing it, I think they kind of
well,
I'm
that's what's interesting is in the books it goes really weird. They talk about the glow, but if you always saw this glow, it'd be distracting. So it's kind of like something your mind shuts out easily. Sidin is different. Um, Considering Inside In, slight spoiler, and getting into things, you don't see the flows inside in. There is no visual cue for side in whatsoever,
I thought
if I
you
can
just
recall right.
I no, I think they still see weaves. I think it's just they don't sense each other the same way. They don't see the glow. They don't. Oh, Ben
They
froze.
don't.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I don't believe they visually see it. It's a like sixth sense for them, but I could be wrong. I'd have to do some
I think
research
they
on it
still see flows. I'm pretty sure. But it's like
because
things like
it's
I don't know. This is a conversation we can have offline, but because I don't want to
but yeah,
accidentally spoil anything. But yeah, I'm okay ditching the glow. I don't really see
yeah.
any unique benefit to get it. I mean, other than the fact
The
that
other
like,
thing,
something happened, and then having like that person in the crowd is glowing, but like I can't see.
I mean,
It seems dumb.
it'd be similar to how we talked about showing the weaves for learning. Is there are a couple of things in the books that it's like when our main girls notice it for the first time, it's kind of a step for them. They're starting to notice other people who glow when they're
Yeah,
channeling, and it
there's
has some.
there's one benefit I could see to it, which I can't talk about. There's one benefit I could see to it, but I don't know how you would show it to make it look good.
Um, the biggest thing is it makes a big deal if you really actually think about it. You say one, if you say like one concept, and if it's the concept of hey, you can't channel around other people who can channel without them knowing you're
No,
channeling.
I wasn't thinking about that one, but that's also a good one. But I think it's
But
pretty
that's what
okay
I
to
was
just have
thinking.
that be a feeling thing.
True, because it is a feeling thing too. Because you can know when somebody's channeling even if they're not within your eye line of
Yeah.
sight. Um,
So the visual there
yes, so
doesn't seem uniquely.
no, it's I for later seasons, it could become important to have some visual key as well.
But I feel like they could
But
find other ways around it.
it might be
To
something that, as a story build, as a world building thing, that it might be come up early a couple of times, just so we know that yeah, there's a glow, but your mind shuts it out. For later stuff, if you're like, I'm hiding in a crowd, yes, you can sense it, but to be able to point me out specifically in a show, it doesn't have any kind of thing that really works, in my opinion. That, like, hey, I'm searching for somebody, I sense something. Crowd of people. Oh, there's a glow, makes it a lot easier, like, for visually speaking when you're trying to find somebody, I would imagine. I could go
yeah.
either way.
All right, so then moving on from that to like the sardine stuff. We have some time. We could talk about sardine. What?
Well, before that, I just thought I'd
Oh,
mention that for the month of March, we're doing MS awareness. I'm actually wearing orange because orange is the color for MS awareness, which is multiple sclerosis for anybody who didn't know. Um, so I just want to mention that real quick because it's the month of March, happens to be MS awareness, and I don't know how much people know about it. I don't know a lot about it, and I'm trying to learn more because it does affect my life, not me personally, but somebody I know. And I haven't talked to them on whether or not they're okay with me talking about it yet. So, um, and it's something that it affects a lot of people. I've had not a ridiculous amount. I think I looked up the numbers. There's like 1 million people with it in the US, but it's not insignificant either. And the Wheel of Time community is pretty close, and there might be people out there it affects it, there might not, but just wanted to bring it to our platform's attention because I have a platform and I'm going to try to use it better than just my own information.
yeah. All right. We'll include a link in this when we post it. We'll include a link to some information so you can check it out. Yeah, and it's good.
If I learn more, I'll try to tell more, but it's a lot. It's very
All
and
right.
the big thing is it's one of those things that
Do you have something hitting your
people
mic?
don't know about anyways. Oh, the dog's scratching.
I was like, what is that sound? Okay.
The puppy was scratching the futon because she's weird. But
Okay.
no, and the thing is it's one of those diseases that they don't know everything about anyways. So that's why it's hard to get information and try to. I don't want to give people information and sound like an idiot. So
Yeah. The gist of what I know is multiple sclerosis or MS is an autoimmune deficiency where your immune cells attack the glial cells on your in your neurosystem.
nervous
So
system,
yeah,
yeah,
nervous
nervous
system.
system.
And so it's the glial cells create this coating that makes it so your neurons can do their job better, so things can move a little faster. And basically, it's your immune system starts eating away at that. So it's kind of crossing through a lot of things because it's neurological, but it's also the immune system, which is part of why it's kind of complicated to figure out. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
we'll leave a link to some information, and you guys can learn a little bit more about it. Spread some information if you feel like making a donation to one of the MS research things or just the awareness fund. Feel free to do so.
as soon as I find where I want to donate money, because that's the other thing is it's not a very large or well-known thing. I was having trouble finding a good donation spot. If I find one I think is really good, I'll let people know. But that's
All
not what
right.
I'm trying to do with the platform. I'm just trying to raise awareness.
All right. So moving on from that, Sidine.
Sidin is very similar to me trying to control this puppy. No, I'm just kidding.
That's
Um, the
a
biggest
really visual
difference,
gag. I feel bad for our podcast listeners.
uh, the difference between Sidar and Sidin, the biggest difference is where Sidar, they're told to surrender and you kind of guide the power. Sidin is very forceful, and there are obviously a lot of typical male versus typical female attributes attributed to him. But Sidin is so much more like, I don't even think a water wheel like is a good example anymore because you're like a water pump to try to go similar where yes it's going, obviously you don't use it up, but you're like forcing the water out of like the bottom of a well or something. you're
It's
you're,
almost
you're
like
pulling it to you.
yeah, it's almost like a little bit the opposite. Whereas with Saidar, you're flowing with the river. With Saidin, you're going against it.
Yeah. um and it's really a lot harder to have a visual for just straight side in. That's why I said it's just, if we're talking about the river being this source, is well, how does the water get back to the top of the river? is it's the other force. It's the side in is why it's so forceful. Is you're going against the natural order of a river. In some way, it's going back to the top, and in the process, you're taking some of the energy from it to do stuff. Distinctly, what's interesting is the same healing or other use of the power is not done the same way. Like we're talking about the fire, the air, and all that. If it takes water, fire, and air to heal for Sidar, it would take like earth, spirit, and fire to heal with Sidin potentially. Or it could be the same powers where Sidar, you have to weave 2% this, five. Like we don't know because we don't get to that much detail within the books, but it's a difference of how it's woven together to work.
A
The
good
only thing we
example, this is I'm going to talk about a specific example from the books because I think it's the best illustration of the difference between Sidene and Sidar. So this is spoilers for the beginning of book 4, The Shadow Rising, but I'm not going to give enough detail so you know like who or what or where or when or how. But like the example we're given is that for putting a fire out with Sidar, you have to use air or water. You use an opposite weave to put the fire out. Whereas with Sidene, you take the heat away from the fire using a flow of fire. So like that's an example
uh
of the same thing being done in very different ways.
yes, and one thing I didn't mention is women, females, um, are typically stronger in water and air, and based on that example means they also have an affinity for water and air, where earth and fire, even if they can use it well, their spiritual makeup, physical makeup, because channeling is tied to the spirit, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now.
That's a conversation for another day.
But it seems that a sidear user has some natural affinity where if they were to try to use fire in that instance, it would cause harm. Where males have an affinity and are stronger in earth and fire, and that's why they can more easily just disperse the heat using fire. It's the biggest example, yes. There's some other things, and in the books, like I said, they don't describe, other than that, so much
There's
of
a
how to
couple
weave it.
other there's a couple
It's a
other examples
mindset.
later that get explained, but that's like the easiest mechanically and simply
Yeah.
to explain is that
Um,
like the difference in how they put out a fire.
yeah. And there's that, and the other side of it is it's based on the mindset, and it goes back to the similar to the females being a harmonious kind of go with the flow, where the male Sidar is much more of a forceful, do what you want it to do. And so it comes within a mindset. And this is what's interesting about the power is sometimes people learn how to do things without doing the like scientific side of it or putting the weaves together. And my personal opinion, I wish there was like subsets of like we are the natural where we kind of use we try to figure out what we want to do and it just comes naturally, where there's the other side that scientifically takes every single weave and calculates how to do something. But that's my
Sounds like a
being
really, really
whitewash your brain.
interesting Age of Legends
um
idea.
there was, well, the best thing I can compare that concept to is anime I watched is like one kind of magic users are the people where it's like almost like making a wish and it comes true, where the other people they understand the physics of the world and they know how to calculate and manipulate the physics.
It's the difference between a sorcerer and a wizard for
Yeah.
D&D. Sorcerers
But
kind of are more naturally inclined. Wizards do the like work.
yeah, so for that, that's the biggest thing is that mindset where it's like if a female using Sidar is like, I want to accomplish a task. I'm trying to think of a weave that for Healing wouldn't work for it.
The best example I can think of is one that's a late series spoiler, but I
I'm
think you
trying to
get the
come up
gist
with a
that the idea,
original idea.
yeah, the idea is that like it's just done differently, and that's enough, I think, information.
Yeah, without going into spoilers. And again, it's like I said, it also to remember that from the female side our sense. And yes, there are some issues with why is it so gender binary, but
Which is, like I said, it's a
Sidar,
conversation for another day, and we
yeah,
can totally get into that at some point. I am so down to get into that at some point, but we don't have the time to
but yeah,
dissect it all today.
Sidar is channeled by females, and all of its aspects are the more gentle, harmonious, go with the flow style. Male is Sidin, and it is the more forceful take, uh, fire, earth, aggressive style of power. And yes, that is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
But
it's a whole
again,
conversation behind.
you channel side in and side R. This is the one thing for terminology at the end I want to go over. Side in and side R are both the one power. That is the power you use to channel. The one power comes from the true source. So if you ever hear those terms, the true source is the well. The one power is the energy created from the moving of the true source through the water wheel or whatever else it is. However you want to try to visualize it. The water wheel is how I best like to describe it, because the river that flows is the true source. The energy created by the water wheel is the one power.
Kind of. Yeah, Robert Jordan kind of mixes his metaphors sometimes, so it gets a little confusing. I guess
Yeah.
just the last thing for the show, and maybe we've talked about this already, and if it's repetitive, so be it. But do you think visually Sidene should look different?
The one thing we didn't talk about is the taint, so I would say yes, because
Okay.
of the taint alone.
So you think they should look, wait, is it the same or different?
Different. Different. Yes.
Yeah.
Because of the
Okay.
taint on side in, which we didn't go over, but that doesn't matter for how the power works. The taint is a whole nother thing on its own.
Yeah, but no, I think there should be like some sort of difference in the visuals for the weaves. Like, I don't know what specifically, but like either they're darker or there's like, I'm thinking this is stupid analogy, but I've had Powerpuff Girls on my brain today. But you know how like the Powerpuff Girls are very bright, vibrant, pink, blue, and green, and then the Rowdy Rough Boys are like dark red, blue, and green. It's kind of the
So
difference
what
I'm
we're saying
picturing.
is when Sidar is going to be more of your like bright red, a limeish type green, uh
I mean, I don't
aqua
think they should be
blue,
specifically that color. Like, I don't know. It's just if you've
where
ever
the
like,
male Sidin is going to be like a navy blue
right, well, no,
and
not exactly that, but like, I don't mean it as Sidene is different. I'm thinking the taint on it makes it like, whereas Sidar, because it's clean, is like a white glowing with a hint of that color. Sidar.
yeah,
Sidene with the taint
has almost
would,
like a miasma around
yeah,
it.
it has like a darkness to it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is it has like this slight, like almost dark miasma around it that like if you were to cut down, like zoom in, is like here's your background color, and this line of Sidar is going across. If you really look, there'd be a slight white glowing border around it. Not huge, not extreme, where Sidin, same background. If you were to zoom in and look at it, these strands of Sidin would have a slight dark purplish or black border to the lines.
Kind of, yeah. Where like
Yeah.
but it would be, I would want it to be like a noticeable difference. But
Well, it would be, but I would just noticeable, but not extreme,
yeah,
I
not
guess.
like over the top.
But I think that covers everything. I hope. Yeah, we rambled, but it's if
What
you've
else is
been
new?
watching or listening to us, it's how we are. I hope you learned something if you've read the books. If you have not read all the books or have not read any of the books, maybe you'll think about this a little bit and my crazy metaphors make sense to you. And we'll see when the show comes out what they do. And honestly, at this point, I'm waiting for the show to come out so I can be like, oh my gosh, I was right about things, or wow, I was wrong.
Well,
I'm already
that
thinking,
was the
wow, I
whole
was.
idea. We were like, oh, we'll have predictions and then we'll react to what actually happens. And then it's like, wow, this is taking
I mean,
forever.
with the kind of announcements we've gotten so far, I'm already
I'm
like,
not even mad.
wow, I was so wrong about some stuff.
Honestly, the guitar threw me. That was the first time I was like, I don't even know if I can predict what you're doing now.
Oh, I know. But that's everything. If you're looking to find us, we are on Twitter and Instagram, and I think we're on Facebook.
We are
Uh,
not, but I could be because Instagram and Facebook are the same thing. So maybe, I don't know.
oh, I didn't
If,
know. I don't know what we're on. I just do Twitter. I don't know what the other social media stuff is, but you can find us at Pod Another. We have a Discord, which is kind of exciting. I don't know. I'm probably going to add, if you're not on our Discord, or if you are, I might add a little section about the whole MS awareness if you want to talk about it. And again, reaching out if there is anybody who has it affect their life in some way. Hey, let's connect and talk. Um, we have a Patreon. It's awesome. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Patreon. If you're listening to us as a podcast, we also have a YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, we also are a podcast.
That's right. And if you're looking for us or other podcasts and YouTubers, and I feel like we should advertise this, is thegreatblake.com. That's where you
Great
can find
place.
all of your, well, most of your content creators. I don't know if all of them are on there yet, but they're probably adding them slowly over time. So all your Wheel of Time content can be found through thegreatblake.com.
Awesome. And we will see you the next time the wheel weaves.
Next time the wheel turns.
Did I say it wrong again? We'll see you the next time the wheel turns. It does both things. And we will see you the next time the wheel turns. Bye.